Welcome to Excel 2010 Statistics video number 1. Hey, if you want to download this workbook, click on the link below the video. Hey, this is the first video in a new statistics series I'm doing covering Excel 2010. Now, what happened? Excel 2010 came out, and all of the statistics functions, the vast majority of them, and pivot table aspects and features that we use for statistics are totally different than earlier versions. So this class, I have other videos at YouTube, but this one's all about Excel 2010. Now, in this video, we want to just have some basic introduction to Excel. This is a statistics class, and it doesn't have an Excel requirement, so I'm going to kind of high speed through the basics of Excel and how we're going to do some things in this class. Now, the first thing is, let's take a look at our website. Here's the address right here. This is an alternative to our course management system. Now, currently, we're using Angel. You can access all the course material through Angel too. But here's our website. You click on the 210. And there will be links for each chapter. Here's Intro to Excel, Chapter 00, and then we start the textbook 1, 2, 3. Now, I'm shooting all these videos and creating all these Excel files as I'm going along, so none of the other links are live yet. Let's click here. And when you download, here's an Excel file. Here's a PDF. Sometimes there'll be Word documents or PowerPoints. The most important ones are always going to be the Excel, because you're going to use that while watching the video to learn about statistics in Excel. And then the PDFs will be pretty important also. With the PDFs, when you download, right-click and point to Save As Target like this, because when you open PDFs in general, they open in the browser. But here, I'm going to download this file. Now, when you download, do not click Open. This class is going to have like 100 videos and maybe 30 files. You actually want to save all of these files. These are going to be important as you go through the class, and you need to go back and remember what you did, because all the tests are cumulative as we go along. So you always want to click Save. You can save it whatever you want. The file name is usually is fine. The file extension, it's always going to say Microsoft Excel Macro Enabled Worksheet. Do not change that. If your computer doesn't allow you to have macro enabled worksheets or workbooks, you have to change that. The setting right here. Now, some of your computers do not show you the file extension. I am going to show you how to change that on your computer, because we have to, all of our files will be .xlsm, which is Microsoft Macro Enabled Worksheet. All right, so I'm going to save this to some location. Wherever you put it, you should probably create a folder, right? So sometimes there's a new folder button up here. By the way, I'm using Windows 7, so my Save As and some of my Start Menu stuff will not look the same if you're using Vista or something else. Maybe a new folder. Right-clicking over here, New Folder. But you should probably create a folder. A new folder, right? Call that. And you want to save all your files to one location. Even better, you should probably save them to a portable jump drive. All right, so here's our first file. I'm going to click Save. All right, so lots of files, lots of videos. Now, I already have mine open here. What we want to do is talk about Excel, look at a few examples of just a broad overview of what Excel can do. Now, the basics of Excel, there's column C, there's column D, column E. So columns are designated by a letter. This is called an Excel column header. Rows are numbers, 12, 13, 14. The intersection of row 14 and column B, that's a cell. It's called a cell. Up here, you can see the name of that cell, or the address is B14. Now, that's very important, because we're going to be basically using formulas and pivot tables for all of our calculations. All of the raw data will be in cells, so we'll have to refer to cells using cell references in formulas, which we'll learn about later. So column, row. Intersection is called a cell. That particular one is B12. Now, all of the cells together are called the worksheet. And you'll see I usually have notes. Worksheet is all the cells. The Sheet tab down here has the worksheet name. So this sheet is called Intro. You could take your cursor and click on the next sheet and the next sheet. Each one of these worksheets, or sheets for short, This is the Sheet tab, and it has the name of the worksheet. Now, if you ever want to rename these, like for your homework, you're going to have to do your homework in Excel. You can simply come, and by default, it starts with Sheet 1, Sheet 2. You double-click it, type a name, and hit Enter. That's how you name a sheet. So I'm going to double-click, type Intro, and hit Enter. So Worksheet has all the cells. Sheet tab has the worksheet name. Now, also in this class, you see I have calculations and then calculation answer, intro and intro answer. So every single time we have a chapter, I'm going to have at least one workbook. You're going to watch the video, follow along. There'll be the sheet where you follow along and do your calculations or your pivot tables or whatever, and there'll be an answer. So if you get stuck watching the video, you can come and look at the answers. All right, now, since we're going to have lots of worksheets in our workbook, I want to show you a keyboard shortcut. And in fact, in this class, I'm going to show you do lots of keyboard shortcuts because they are much faster than having to use your mouse or go find the ribbon or various other methods. Now, how do you move through the sheet? Control page down. Notice what it's doing. It's moving and selecting each sheet. Control page down. Now, where's page down? Page down and page up are by the navigation keys. They're above your arrow keys. They're right next to home and end, insert, and delete. So you want to find page down and try that. That goes to the right and shows successive sheets. Page up goes to the left, showing successive sheets. Again, in this class, we're going to have big files with lots of worksheets. Now, all of these sheet tabs with worksheets here may have a certain view, which just means you can see this much right here. But there's more stuff over to the right and more stuff below. So you can use your scroll arrows over here, your scroll box. I'm grabbing the scroll box and dragging up. You can use your scroll arrows. Similarly, you can go to the left and right. Right? And we will have lots of big worksheets with lots of cool stuff for us to do statistics in our files. Now, all of these worksheets with sheet tabs that have our names, all of the worksheets together make up what's called a workbook. Now, the workbook is just the file, right? Up here, we could see our file name or our workbook name. Again, the workbooks are all the sheets. The file is the workbook. We want to talk about this file extension. We already talked about it just a moment ago when you're downloading. I want to show you now because the title bar, the Save As dialog box, your computers might not allow you to show this. It's easy to change. And in fact, I have a note down here. Show file extension. That's what we're going to do. You have to find folder options on your computer. Now, I'm using Windows 7 operating system, and some of the earlier operating systems, or later ones for that matter, are much different. So you have to find on your computer folder options, and then go to the View tab and uncheck Hide Extensions for known file types. Now, I'm going to do it on this computer. I go to Start. I'm going to go to Control Panel. Actually, I did Windows 7. I don't like it all the way it's set up. It's easier on earlier computers. Appearance and Personalizations. And then folder options. Now, there's other, however you get there, you want to get to folders options. And then it's easy. This is the dialog box, View tab, and here it is, Hide Extensions for known file types. For whatever reason, most computers are set up by default having this checked, which means that you cannot see your file extensions, which is crazy. You want to see your file extensions. You want to see what kind of Excel file it is, what kind of PDF, what kind of Word. So uncheck it and then click OK. OK, so columns, rows, cells, worksheets, workbooks. Now we want to look up here. This is called the home ribbon, the insert, or the home. These are all called ribbons. Some people call them the home ribbon, insert ribbon. Really, they're all the ribbon together. That's the home tab, the insert tab, the page layout. For us, we'll be using some of these formatting things, especially up here on the home ribbon. Insert, we'll definitely be using charts and definitely be using pivot tables. Probably never touch page layout. We'll do some formula stuff from the formula tab, ribbon tab. However, most of the stuff we'll be doing just creating our formulas in the cells. data. We'll use some sorting, filtering perhaps. These review, probably never use. View, we might use that 1 or 2 times. Developer and add-ins, you probably don't have those on your computers. Here's what's called the quick access. Here, let me go back to home. This is called the quick access toolbar. Yours is probably above, up here. That button right there, undo. Notice when I point to some element, if there's a keyboard shortcut, like there is for Control Save, for undo, it appears in the screen tip. In this class, I'm going to be using a lot of keyboard shortcuts because they're fast. Right there, it says Control Z. So I'll use Control Z, not this undo. Undo is basically our best friend. All right, so quick access toolbar, ribbons and tabs in the ribbons. Now, we want to see the 4 things that Excel can do. And this is important because this is why spreadsheets were invented. This Excel can store raw data, make calculations, perform data analysis, and create charts. Our whole class, every single chapter, will do all of these. Now, the first thing is storing raw data. Up here, we have some sales numbers. Now, notice we have this in a column. There is what's called a variable name or field name or column header. This word is very important when you're storing raw data. It says what type of data is in this column. Over here, we have date, auto sold, and sales. Each one of the column headers or variable names or field names says what is in this column. Dates, the actual auto, sold, and sales. We'll have a lot more to say about how data is stored later. But for this intro video, we can store raw data in Excel. Very important. Number 2, making calculations. Now, here we have a column of numbers, and we'd like to add them. And at this point, I'd like to point out the 2 guys who invented the spreadsheet, VisiCalc, back in '79, named Bricklin and Frankston. They had this idea. They wanted to. They got tired of columns of data like this. They'd actually type it into their calculator and then sum it and write it down. And later, one of the inputs would change to 26. And what did they have to do before spreadsheets? They actually went back to their calculator and retyped everything in. So these 2 guys thought of creating the spreadsheet. And what that'll allow us to do is create a formula here, which is a calculation, whatever the calculation ours will be adding. It will look at this range of cells. And anytime we change an input, the calculation will change. Now, I'm going to just do this real quick here. We'll talk formally about formulas 2 videos ahead. I'm adding this up. Now, notice it says C2 to C9. That means it's not got any hard-coded numbers like on a handheld calculator. It's just looking at that range. So when I hit Enter, the answer is 47. If I go and change one of the inputs to 26, now watch this formula here. When I hit Enter, that is just magic. So Excel can do calculations. Now I want to show you a couple examples. We will look at all of these examples in videos coming up. Here's our data set. Here's an example of a new function in 2010 called rank.average. And this function just didn't exist in earlier versions. One of the reasons we have to use 2010 Excel for all of our class. All right, so what does this function do? It calculates and gives us the rank. This is the first. This is the second. And notice this particular function, when there's a tie, it calculates and gets 6.5 plus and 6.5. And then the next one is not 7, it's 8. Another example, I want to come down here, and I want to show you another example of calculating. Also, in this example here, I'd like to point out why we're actually using Excel. I mean, this is a stats class, right? 5 credits of statistics. That's hard enough, and I'm going to make you do Excel too. Well, let me show you why. Well, in Chapter 3, we'll learn how to do standard deviation. Now, here's how you'd have to do it longhand. And imagine doing this on paper. You'd first calculate the average of all these numbers. Then you'd have to come over and calculate the deviation squared. Every single individual number you are analyzing, you have to calculate deviation squared. Now, I remember doing this on paper, and it took forever. Once you get this huge column of numbers, right, then you have to add them divide the total by the count, and finally take the square root. Now, even doing it in Excel in the cells, you can do it pretty quickly if you know about formulas, and we will learn how to do this. But imagine if you're out there in the working world and you use this calculation day in and day out. No problem. The reason you use Excel is because there's a function, STDEV, which means standard deviation for the population. And we'll study exactly what this means in chapter 3 and all the remaining chapters. But there it is. With one simple function, it calculates the answer. Now, this stdev.p, this is a new function, 2010. There were earlier functions, and this one here, this is now called a compatibility function. We're not going to use any of these. We're going to use all the new ones. Now, this example, you could see that they both give you the same answer, old one, new one. Here's an example, like we just mentioned a moment ago. This function just flat out doesn't exist. Again, everything we do in this class will be Excel 2010. All right, so we can store raw data. We can make calculations. Data analysis. Totally awesome, the data analysis Excel can do. Now, most of us always hear this term data analysis, and it always seems so big and scary, or it may not to you. You may think, oh yeah, I do that all the time, it's easy. But data analysis is simple. We have raw data like this. And if you have huge data sets, man, it's hard to make sense of all this individual little bits of raw data. This is an example of data analysis. We took the raw data and created useful information from our raw data. Here is the biggest cell. Here is the second cell. So the first and second biggest cell were Toyotas. Another example of data analysis is we've taken from our raw data and listed each individual item a single time. And then what do? We counted how many. Now, we'll do this in chapter 2. We'll create frequency tables. Again, this is from raw data, hard to make sense or see any patterns, to useful information. We've counted. We can see Toyota sold the most, Honda's the second most, and Ford way at the bottom. Right? So data analysis, take raw data, create useful information. Now, it's not just limited to calculations. When we create charts, and we will create charts throughout this class, that's also a type of data analysis. We're taking raw data and creating useful information. All right, and finally, charts. I'm just going to show you how easy it is. Once you've created your calculation, right, we have column for our autos, a column for our frequency or count. We can simply do something like insert a column chart. And the tallest column tells us which one has the most. Now, a couple videos ahead, I'll show you how to fix the labels, put a little number at the top, label the axes, and all that kind of stuff. All right, so in this video, we just went over the basics of Excel. In essence, how Excel is set up, the spreadsheet, ribbons. We saw our quick access toolbar. We saw the 4 main things Excel can do. In our next video, and I'm going to come back just in a moment, I'm going to show you how to add the data analysis add-in, which is a special statistical add-in that doesn't come by default loaded. It's super easy to add in, and we'll use it throughout our class. All right, we'll see you next video.